we have our VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week. And so since we had Kai on, I thought, let's ask you for one of your hints and tips. So this one you said you just got yesterday or just recently?
Yeah, I just needed to find and use that yesterday. So I had a bunch of code that was all over the place with tabs and spaces historically, because it was like 10 years old files, and I know probably 20 people have worked on that. And so the problem was, normally in a project, you should have something like an EditorConfig file. For the people who don't know what EditorConfig is, it's almost a standard for IDEs and editors. It's a little dot file, .editorconfig, and tools like Visual Studio Code and Sublime and IntelliJ and VI and all sorts of things support EditorConfig. And in that EditorConfig file, you can define, I want all spaces to be tabs, or I want 4 characters indentation for CFML files, but only 2 for JS files, and 7 for whatever other exotic language. I want that for a reason. So you set up kind of how editors should treat your files. But what EditorConfig doesn't do in most cases is it doesn't retrospectively fix your files. So I had this whole code base of files, and it's like, oh no, this is so painful.
See, I didn't know that. I thought it did. That's why I was so confused. Because on save, it does have some options to do things, but
yeah, I tried that in Visual Studio, and it fixes it for where I make changes, but all the untouched areas in a file, it doesn't fix them, at least not in EditorConfig. And what you should actually also say is probably not every IDE supports all EditorConfig features. So it might well be that in certain IDEs it does that. So, but anyway, I mean, yesterday I was so frustrated. I thought, like, I need to get these files all into spaces because it annoys me to no end. So I found these plugins called Untabify and Tabify, if you want to do that. And essentially what it does is you install it into Visual Studio Code, and then you do like Ctrl-T Ctrl-U, and you say like, okay, I want every tab replaced with 4 spaces, and it does it cleans up the whole file for you. You save it and you're done, essentially. And that's kind of useful. You can do the other way around, where you go from spaces to tabs. I have to admit, I don't know many people who do that, because most code bases seem to be done with spaces these days. But I mean, there's probably a use case for that as well.
Yeah, I think we use tabs. We'll use the EditorConfig though to change it, and with your VS Code sitting, what you can do is when you open it, if you like tabs, it can convert the spaces to tabs. But when you save it, it puts it back in the spaces format, so Kai doesn't get mad when Gavin opens his file. And when I'm looking at it, it's all tabs, because I like to be able to go move from, three arrow keys to move from the front of the line to the code, or 3 control spaces or whatever, so control movements, because I like that. I like tabs for that reason, but it doesn't mean I can't save it. So the thing is, I understand that the Unicode stuff with spaces is better for a lot of different things. There's a lot of pros about that, but doesn't mean that when I'm working in my IDE I can't use tabs, because I like using tabs for that reason. So, but I think there's pros and cons for both, and having the tools to handle it should be the best way. Like your IDE should be able to open spaces, convert it to tabs, and when you save it, you can put it back in the format that Kai wants it. So,
not just me. Don't make this about me, Gavin.
No, I'm just trying to make it relatable. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, okay, there's a lot of reasons for that spaces make sense, but it's usually for my side of it is usually tabs are more developer friendly when you're actually editing it, but spaces are better for readability and other things, and screen readers and other stuff like that. So anyway.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So, but yeah, that looks pretty cool. So Untabify, and then we also will send the link out for EditorConfig, which we've actually done in the previous recommendations. But yeah, I always wonder though how good some of these are, because sometimes when I open things up, I feel like I've got 3 different things fighting sometimes, for like tabs versus spaces versus linters versus other stuff, and I really wish they would play nice, because that's
before I found Untabify, I tried to do it with CF format and get that kind of fixed that way, but then I realized that doesn't seem to have support for exactly that feature, that it can rewrite all the tabs into spaces or vice versa. And I found some other, and the problem was also, it was like tag-based CFML code. Yeah. And I found sometimes CF format has some quirks around tag-based CFML code, so it didn't go that well. And then, Untabify came to the rescue, essentially.
Yeah. And Scott says he just likes to intermingle them just to spice things up. Yeah, you would do that, Scott. Tab, space, tab. Yeah. That's why we don't let Scott in the repos anymore. But no, but thanks again for that recommendation, Kai. It's always good to have new hints and tips. That was our VS Code hint, tip, and trick of the week. Brought to you by Modernize or Die podcast, CFML News Edition, proudly sponsored by Order Solutions. You can see the new episodes every week on cfmlnews.modernizeordie.io or on the Order Solutions YouTube channel.